2017 Cram, Critical Analysis and Reasoning Skills, Flashcard Set 17.2. What is life? As you view the reading of this passage, you'll notice a few highlighted selections of text. What I want you to do is garner meaning from these selections in order to answer the two reasoning beyond the text questions that follow at the end. They're really not that bad, so good luck and happy reading. Paragraph 1. The greatest problem of biology is understanding the divide that exists between life and matter. There seems to be an unbridgeable gulf between them, but how could life have emerged from matter if it is fundamentally different from it? The received view today is that life is but an extremely complex form of chemistry, which is equivalent to saying there is no fundamental divide between them. Primordial, this word meaning existing at or from the beginning of time. Genes and primordial proteins appeared spontaneously on the primitive Earth and gradually evolved into increasingly more complex structures all the way up to the first cells. The basic units of life, the problem of which molecules came first, has been the object of countless debates, but in a way it is a secondary issue. What really matters is that spontaneous genes and spontaneous proteins have the potential to evolve into the first cells. This, however, is precisely what molecular biology does not support. Paragraph 2. The genes and proteins of the first cells had to have biological specificity, and specific molecules cannot be formed spontaneously. They can only be manufactured by molecular machines, and their production requires entities like sequences and codes that simply do not exist in spontaneous processes. That is what really divides matter from life. All components of matter arise by spontaneous processes that do not require sequences and codes, whereas all components of life arise by manufacturing processes that do require these entities. It is the signaling of these sequences and codes, or semiosis. Semiosis means the process of signification that makes the difference between life and matter. It is semiosis that does not exist in the inanimate world, and that is why biology is not a complex form of chemistry. Paragraph 3. The problem of the origin of life becomes in this way the problem of understanding how the first molecular machines came into existence and started producing new types of molecules. We have seen that chemical evolution could spontaneously produce bond makers, molecules that had the ability to stick subunits together, and we have also seen that some bond makers could become copy makers by sticking subunits together in the order provided by a template. The next step was the appearance of code makers, and that is much more difficult to account for. But in principle, it has the same logic, and we can regard it as a natural event. Ribosomes, for example, can still arise by a self-assembly from their components. What really matters is that molecular machines could arise spontaneously, and once in existence, they started producing molecules that cannot be formed spontaneously. More precisely, they started producing specific genes and specific proteins, and that is what crossed the gulf that divides inanimate matter from life. Paragraph 4. The genetic code was the first organic code in the history of life, but was not the only one. We have seen that other organic codes came into existence and that they account not only for the production of new biological objects, but also for the organization of these objects into higher structures and for their interactions with the external world. Semiosis, in short, was not limited to the production of specific molecules. There are at least three different types of semiosis in nature, and we find codes at all levels of life, from the world of genes and proteins all the way up to mind and language. Physics and chemistry provide, of course, the building blocks of life, but what animates matter is codes. And that is why there is a deep truth in the oversimplified statement that life is semiosis. Which of the following is least analogous to the semiosis described in paragraph 4 and throughout the passage? Is it A, a device programmed to carry out a set of logical operations? Is it B, traditional embroidery in chain stitch on a Persian rug? Is it C, assorted gases expelled from a volcanic vent? Or is it D, a figure-8 dance used by honeybees to communicate? I'll give you a moment to think. If you're having difficulty answering, open up a second window to view the reading of the passage and search for the text support to select the correct answer choice. All right. Okay, so for this reasoning beyond the text question, you have to apply the ideas expressed in the passage to these new situations in the answer choices. And you have to understand the assumptions underlying the article and then assess how the new information in the answer choices might shift the central thesis, okay? Let's first start out by going through our evidence. The end of paragraph 4 states, quote, that life is semiosis. The central message of the passage is that coded sequences and directed patterns are what define life. Semiotic actually means the study of signs, but even if you didn't know that, you can infer from the passage that semiosis is referring to the patterns of meaning in nature, more specifically codes and sequences. All right, so a device programmed to carry out operations as specified here in answer choice A, a chain stitch on a Persian rug specified in answer choice B, and a figure-8 dance used by honeybees to communicate are all examples of things that involve specific predictable patterns. But the assorted gases expelled from a volcanic vent specified in answer choice C, this is more chaotic and least analogous to the semiotic notion of order and higher organization, okay? So that's why the correct answer choice is answer choice C, assorted gases expelled from a volcanic vent. All right. Suppose scientists discover a spongy substance on the bottom of the ocean that appears to eat small fish, expel waste, reproduce, and eventually die. The spongy substance does not contain any components that require coding or sequencing. Based on the passage, The author is most likely to classify the discovery as A, primordial life, B, life, C, the result of non-spontaneous processes, or D, matter. I'll give you a moment to think. Definitely press pause if you need to. If you're having difficulty answering, open up a second window to view the reading of the passage and search for the text support to select the correct answer choice. All right. Okay, so for this second reasoning beyond the text question, you also have to apply the ideas in the passage, but the new situation here is mainly in the question stem. Okay, so you have to understand again the assumptions underlying the article and assess how the new information given in the question stem, and as well as the answer choices, shifts the central thesis. Okay, let's discuss our evidence from the passage that we're going to use to support the correct choice and discredit incorrect choices. All right, so we have to think along these lines. The best answer that must consider that the author would classify the spongy substance based on the fact that its components do not require sequences and codes. Okay, so this is what we're taking a deeper look at. The author writes that when molecular production requires entities, quote, like sequences and codes that simply do not exist in spontaneous processes, that is really what divides matter from life. Thus, only life, which would include primordial life, specified in answer choice A, requires sequences and codes, okay? So life and primordial life, they're both out, while matter does not. Okay, so matter doesn't require sequences and codes. The author does not provide a specific definition for primordial life, and since the spongy substance does not contain any components that require coding or sequencing, the author would not infer that this is non-living matter that resulted from a non-spontaneous process. Therefore, overall, the correct answer choice is answer choice D, matter, okay, because it doesn't require sequences and codes. All right? Okay.